Wasn't much to look at. There were no luxuries, just a room with a bar, some stools, a jukebox, and a dozen or so brown wooden booths. Even so, for 3 generations of University of New Hampshire students, Buck's Cafe of Dover was a home away from home.
Buckley's Cafe was a place where people were, where UNH students would hang out, so to speak, and a place to meet and discuss and talk, and in the process, come under the spell of the person who ran it.
That person was Martha Buckley. Martha's husband had started the cafe on School Street in 1942, but she began running it after his death in 1952. She lived in an apartment above the bar with her son Jack.
I took it over because I was young then, and like I said, my son was young, and I didn't want to leave him and go out to work, so I kept it. And because I was young, I could speak like the rest of them. They wanted a joke, I could tell them a joke. And more or less, I grew up along with them, too, at the same time.
Although Jack was her biological son, the university students that came to Buck's Cafe also became Martha's children, and she treated them as such.
I can't recall actually getting kicked out, but I'm sure I was threatened with it many times. And she certainly was a surrogate mother and a great banker. I think I hold a record there. I mean, it's tough to run up $137 on dime beers, but I think I did it.
Bobby Houle, I knew him when he was a baby, because he lived next door to me. He and his brother Richard, his mother and his father and sister. And I tell you, he was a little hellion then. He hasn't changed much.
Buck's opened at 7 a.m. for factory employees who would stop in after having worked the night shift. During those early morning hours, the bar was tended by Martha's father, Steve. But from 11 until 1 o'clock at night, Martha stood behind the bar, serving beer and occasionally bringing down food from her apartment for hungry customers who could smell her dinner from downstairs.
In many ways, she protected us. The place probably held 80 legitimately, but many a night there'd be over 100 in there. Many a night, a local pedestrian, just seeing the ambience and thinking he'd join a conviviality, would be told the place was closed.
Tell him that there was a party going on, he wasn't wanted. And I'm sorry, I can't serve you. I can't wait on you. But then I would see all the other Doverites, the older people, like the homeless, will say, well, there weren't any homeless then, but they would be hanging up around the street, and if I went up shopping or something, I would give them money and tell them not to come into Buck's. I said, here, go buy your Green Lightning somewhere. Well, they used to call it Green Lightning. It was a cheap whiskey down at the liquor store. It used to be green. So I'd give them 50 cents here or 50 cents there or $1. It all depended. Oh, yeah. So they wouldn't come in. They never did.
Martha always kept her family safe. In turn, they came to her with their questions and concerns. She dispensed motherly wisdom and advice on school, finances, careers, and of course, romance.
We had several weddings, and I think I attended 3, if I can remember it correctly. And Jackie would perform the services, and we'd have cakes, and we'd have decorations. I mean, we did it up. And of course, Martha was always with us. She would join in, sing, dance, jitterbug. We just always had a good time.
And I'll tell you, which is true, Bozer Kennedy, when he wanted to get married, he says, I'm going to bring her in. He says, give me the okay. And I did. We've been married 35 or 40 years now.
Martha and her Bucks family lived through some serious moments, too.
They'd come in and says to me, would you mind closing up for the funeral? I said, I'll close up right now. This was like on a Friday. So I called up a few other places, and I said, why don't you close up? I'm closing up. They all did. We all closed up Friday afternoon, right through Monday afternoon after the funeral.
Young people coming back from Vietnam, you know, having been to UNH for a while, going to Vietnam, coming back, talking with a couple of lawyers in town that had stopped in at night. A lot of discussion and a lot of emotion, and you know, it was important. It was not just, you know, a place just to go for nothing to do. I mean, we did some serious thinking and being.
Also a place where students and their favorite professor could get together. You know, it was really prevalent at that time to carry on discussions after, if you were stimulated by something in class. And Durham didn't allow that, you see, at the time. And Dover was close by, and so people would go there. And it became a place where I suspect some really wide-ranging intellectual discussions took place. A lot of kind of homely wisdom generated in a place like that.
My son here, 85 to 89, was shortchanged that there wasn't a Bucks for him.
Martha loved her children very much, but thinking, discussing, mothering, and serving beer 14 hours a day is exhausting. After 28 years, Martha decided it was time to close Buck's Cafe. In June of 1980, the building was sold, and people came to say goodbye.
You couldn't get a seat, standing room only, people from everywhere. And I said to myself, I wonder what they came to see. And then I realized it's what they came to see, that, you know, what they missed.
Two fellas, one of them was Dumbo Dunkowski, was up against the window, and he cried himself sick to think that we were closing up.
Today, the building at number 1 School Street is still there, but Buck's Cafe is no more. The spot is now the kitchen of an Indian restaurant. But Martha Buckley is still around, and so are hundreds of people who used to frequent Buck's Cafe. People like Bobby Houle, Janis Petrou, Walter Peterson, and Ted and Mimi Lampesis, who keep an original booth from Buck's in the basement of their home. And John Guy, who, on closing day, went home with a sign.
A ladder was put up, and we went up and unbolted it and took it down. And Martha gave it to me. I did not steal it.